Hi, everyone, and welcome to the AI and NYC show. I'm Rob May, the co-founder and CEO at Neurometric.
And I'm Ryan Eppley, co-founder and CEO of Root Access.
And our guest host today is Dennis Mortensen from Launch Brightly, is your current company?
That is correct.
Yeah, and really excited to have him here today because 20-year entrepreneur in New York City, lots of companies, some successful, some not. So we're going to talk all about that, but why don't you tell us the sort of key Dennis facts before we get started, things people should know about yourself.
Oh, so that's the, I'll give you the short version and then you can get the email to my mom. She'll do the 4-hour seminar,
Okay.
which is spectacular. But the short version is that I actually, which is the funny part of it, did not want to be an entrepreneur because my dad, uncles, cousins are all entrepreneurs in their own right. So all I wanted was just to get my computer science degree and go work for IBM. I lived in Denmark, get my 7 weeks of vacation, and that was the plan. And I did game development to kind of earn a little bit of beer money in college. And that company ended up going bankrupt. And I was so pissed that the title, which I've been working on together with a small team for a year and a half, and the way you pay students, as a side note, is you pay them on delivery because they're just not reliable. So I ended up buying the assets of that company and got kind of sucked into entrepreneurship immediately, right out of college, and earned what I thought was a small fortune when I bought the software and sold it to some German distributor. Wasn't really much, but back then it felt like a lot. And even on that little success, I still thought that I was kind of destined. I actually never talked to IBM, but I was still destined to kind of go work for IBM because they had an office in my town. So I took all of it, not even like, oh, let's split it up. No, let's take all of it and I put it into like an internet analytics company back in the mid-90s. And I thought, you know what, I'll do this quick, lose it all, then go to my desk out at IBM. And then, of course, it was just good timing. We did analytics on web server logs, kind of pre you putting a pixel on a site to get some statistics, right?
Yeah.
So we did that for 4.5 years, had a very good exit in April 11th, 2000. So I'm one of those kids for where you talk about the dot-com boom. Yeah, I got out right at the top.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything. It was just one of those things
Amazing
where
timing.
You stumble into some sort of party where, oh yeah, this is good. So that was the beginning. But all my ventures, I'm now in my 6th venture. It's been about 5 years on average on each, have been data centric, trying to figure out some either original data source or some way to extract new novel data and then build something on top of it.
Well, let's talk about, I think, one of your most interesting ventures. And when I first came across you publicly, but before we met in person, but I was following you a little bit, you were doing x.ai,
Yeah.
which was one of the first like real AI use cases where you would, so for people that don't know it, you would email, you would copy x.ai, Amy or Andrew or somebody like that. And it would just handle your scheduling the way a human would. And you guys raised like a ton of money for that. And I remember I was working on a customer support chatbot and we were trying to figure out like, wow, what do you guys know that you could make this work? Cause I couldn't figure out how to make the AI work for that yet. But and your timing was close. You were just barely pre-LLM. Tell us a little bit about that experience. What happened?
So I think we all agree if you do any venture, you should try to at least not fall in love with the technology. As in, it's so easy. If you're just a little bit of a geek, you know what? I can geek out on things, not for weeks, but for years on end with no commercial prospects. So I try very hard to figure out whether the very pain that I'm trying to solve for is true and honest. So this whole idea, certainly going back in time and probably still today, for where the three of us trying to meet up at a certain day, at a certain time, at a certain location in New York, it's not as easy as it sounds, which is why if you ask people, what is your fantasy? The fantasy is always the same. You know what, Dennis? I dream of becoming SVP of Flim Flam at Time Inc. so that I can get Tim, that human assistant, to do this shit for me.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably going to take some time. I'll give it a few decades, but at some point, I'll kind of graduate and cross that inflection point on the corporate ladder where I'm given a human. But that's the fantasy. So we always thought that if we could somehow replicate that fantasy of you not having to pay 60K, pay me $10 instead, and kind of do that particular task, that might be a good idea. And it certainly was a good idea. Everybody wanted it. Now, delivering on that promise was a little harder. So we took a chance. And many times, again, just as a side note, and you guys would agree, right? As entrepreneurs, we take typically one of two kind of bets. It's either a market bet or a science bet.
Yeah.
This was not a market bet. Kind of like the self-driving car is not a market bet. We all want it.
Yeah.
It just took a little longer to kind of engineer than we had imagined.
Right.
This was not a market bet. This was one for where can we, at this very moment, 2015, when we got started, carve out a corner of the language universe and solve for that. Not a kind of chatbot who can speak kind of in general things, but just an agent that could converse on this one particular topic. And we got it to work, as you said, in the end, but damn, it took a lot of money and a lot of time to get there. We did the whole thing as that's too simple of a kind of title to it, but it was primarily based on supervised learning. So we had, just in scope, a little over 100 people alone just doing labeling on, in the end, about what, short of 50 intents, like new meeting, cancel meeting, running late, add participant, extend duration, so on and so forth, doing predictions on all of those, and 3 entities. So temporal, location, and people. And we hand labeled about 32 million labels.
Wow.
Over a 4-year period. But we did cross into that kind of other side for where the very use of the product generated new labels for where we could then train in that. So all the labels ended up going on June 1st, noon EST, which was midnight Manila, which was a very kind of, ecstatic moment, right? Where we kind of got to the other side. The agent do exactly as we wanted to do.
Well, it's also a hard, it's an ambiguous domain. I actually know, that's a funny story. I know a guy in Boston who did his PhD work on NLP, and what does soon mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because that's yeah.
So just to give you some context here, and again, not to turn this into something overly kind of geeky, but if everybody would just be somewhat sane and not lie, like just 2 concepts, then this could probably be solved in a whole lot less time. But the fact is that people are not sane and they lie all the time. Not intentional lies, but they'll say things like, at 1 a.m., you email me saying, Dennis, I got a great idea. Can we meet up first thing tomorrow morning? What you really mean today morning. It's just that you haven't gone to bed yet. So
Right.
the idea of saying today morning kind of doesn't feel right.
Right.
Okay, at 1 a.m., you and me can do an if-then statement, do a little bit of ML perhaps, but at what point? At 5 a.m. and you say tomorrow, that's probably what? In 27 hours or something like that. Or when is it? And then, of course, there's the kind of next week, fucking Americans, and this whole idea of the week beginning on Sunday, or having the idea of the week beginning on Sunday. Like next week, if I say that Sunday, 6 p.m., that's in 7 days. We just had very different ideas. It was very hard to kind of solve for. So to give you some idea of the kind of long tail, so we tested against 22,000 edge cases whenever we did an update to our models to see if it would still kind of reliable predict what it did yesterday.
And as my engineering friends and I always joke, how many systems break because of daylight savings? So many things always crash because of that.
So here's another story, right? So there's 2 types. They're not, right? But there's certainly 2 buckets of errors. So we did all of the things that machines do well. Daylight saving, the fact that India is on a half-hour time zone, so on and so forth. All those kind of silly things that we kind of forget. Oh, yes, London, New York is only 4 hours over those 3 weeks over the summer, and so on and so forth. The machine just killed it at that because that's the easy part. Now, it's the errors that humans just couldn't understand, such as we spent probably 8 months working on some idea of common sense that allowed elasticity in your scheduling hours. So you might have scheduling hours that go from 9 to 5 on Wednesdays, but we haven't seen each other for years. We used to be college buddies. I'm in from Singapore. And that whole kind of backdrop will have any human assistant say, I'm probably allowed to stretch your hours.
Oh, it sounds like a happy hour or dinner or drinks after.
Like many kind of good arguments. Doesn't mean that all of a sudden I'm at an event until 11 p.m., but if you can come in at 5:30, you don't even have to ping me, of course. Right? So we spent 8 months on that. But when we did it, people ended up kind of getting a little bit annoyed and, hey, so how many tens of millions of dollars, because our funding was public, do you need to do an if-then statement, you muppet? That's what I got on Twitter all the time. As in 5:30 is later than 5. Then we explained to them. And that actually carved out this whole new category of what we called perceived errors. And the whole bucket of what we call perceived errors was much, much harder to kind of solve for where that's actually the predictions are running at very high accuracy. The design is doing exactly what we wanted to do. But that ended up having us kind of re-engineer the agent to not be humanized. Because as soon as we humanized it, there was a set of expectations that was built into this conversational UI that people couldn't kind of escape. So when we started to make it machine-like, then they started to kind of better accept that kind of bucket of perceived errors. That wasn't errors. So a perceived error for us was one for where the user thought this didn't go according to plan, and I'll now complain, even though the very system did exactly what it wanted to do. And on explanation, you also agree.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry, this is turning into a little bit.
Yeah,
of
no,
it's very funny. It's very funny
yeah.
because I just had this actually happen. My friend from England was over, and she said, "Meet me at 6:30 or like half 6."
Half six.
In my mind, that's halfway to 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
All right, like that's 5:30. That's like
it's the
half
same.
6.
It's
like
the same for Danes.
All right.
Nah, not
that's
for Brits.
6:30 in Britain. I was like, whoa. Like that's halfway to 6 o'clock, not 6:30. So I can only imagine how many small things like that just go over our heads day to day. And then scheduling just sounds like a nightmare to do that.
But I'll take the whole thing back to the top, and we can certainly go into details here, just because we spent half a decade, which is a funny side note, for where there's no dinner party, for where I get to stand in a corner speaking to somebody who will say, Dennis, can we talk about meeting scheduling for the next 2 or 3 hours? There's no room for me to talk about this PhD, which I've assembled over half a decade. So it's just me. So any opportunity for people to ask, hold my hand. But let me roll it back to the top. If I were to kind of go back and kind of state what had the most impact of all the stuff we did, and we had a spectacular data science team and an unfair amount of labelers and really good backdrop to do all the sexy stuff. But the things that had the most impact was product design, as in taking decisions for what should the product look like and do. And little things like, so we had an overall success metric, which we called meeting success. So from request to actual insert. There's some sort of natural ceiling around 91% for where many meetings upon request will end up not happening because you get sick, it got solved over Slack, the flight was canceled, and so on and so forth. So it's a very natural ceiling. So we were kind of running towards that ceiling. But the kind of step functions towards that were, and I'll give you the biggest one, when we renamed the agent from Amy and Andrew to Scheduler. It's one of those, like any startup, you run 1,000 experiments, right? And not only did I fucking hate that experiment, because I was, hey, Amy and Andrew.
Yeah.
They're my kids.
Children.
Right?
Yeah.
And not only that, I had people in place, like Anna out of Harvard, who worked on folklore for ages to build a character. So when you spoke to the agent on Monday, it felt like the same agent on Friday. Like an unfair amount of detail were put into how the agent kind of communicated. When we renamed that to Scheduler, multiple single percentage points increase in meeting success. Like another thing that worked really well in our favor that I also hated. Like the most successful experiments we ran were mostly experiments that I hated. But I liked the idea of the emails being mostly ASCII. It's a little cheat. So we'll still use kind of bold, italic, a few bullets and so on and so forth. But the concept of you could have written that, right? As in, you just type that out right now, as a human would do. As soon as we inserted HTML, as in, no need for somebody to write back saying next Wednesday at 1 o'clock is okay and Laney is indeed optional. If I can predict with a high probability that that is what you want, just give them a button. As in, don't be allergic to good UI paradigms that already exist. But I was so allergic for the longest period of time. Anywho, yes, I worked for that. On that for half a decade.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about you've been in the New York ecosystem for a long time, and I moved here from Boston, but the reason that I moved to Boston from Louisville, Kentucky in 2010, because that was my first startup. And I was looking at the Boston versus the New York ecosystem. And like Boston was like 2 or 3 times the size of New York at that point from a tech perspective. And I would say like 2013, 2014, New York sort of caught up and now has just like really surpassed
Really
Boston. And so
eclipsed
like,
it.
what was it like when you got here? And like, what do you think have been some of the drivers of those changes over the years?
Good question. I can certainly remember when I arrived. So I arrived on us having sold our prior venture to Yahoo. And one of the deal terms were actually that I moved to New York. So it was not even one of those things on your bucket list or feels like a good destination to kind of go work. This was part of the terms we put in place for me
That
to
cash
get
out.
to get that sum of money in my pocket that we had negotiated. And the funny thing is, I pitched very hard for the West Coast, Silicon Valley, all that good juice. But 9 hours, and we did that venture out of Budapest. So I spent 4 years in Budapest. We bootstrapped it, which you could do back then in Eastern Europe. It's obviously nice when you sell to Yahoo, don't have to send out any checks to anybody else, just in your pocket. So they put me here, and I thought, yeah, I'll just hang around for a little while, then move out west. But New York is just very hard once you arrive and you kind of embed yourself into the system to escape it. And I've had multiple kind of moments where there was kind of an opportunity, a juncture for where, Dennis, there's an exit coming 100 meters. You can take it if you want to. And I tried, but I just can't. So when I arrived, I certainly had this kind of moment of despair is a little too dramatic, right? But you build up a network of people wherever you're at, right? So back home, Europe, you have some sort of network, people you can call or rely on, good engineers, a scientist, or kind of possible customers and this and that kind of industry. So you arrive kind of empty here. But I remember the first, like week 1, New York tech meetup. And I did it every month, probably for the first 3-4 years. So the very first one, that was MongoDB, who presented not even an early version, just they put a little bit together, they presented it, and I thought, hey, first of all, I took my CS degree on multiple versions of traditional relational DBs. Like, what is this? Document database, these queries kind of in half JavaScript. Come on, this is laughable.
Not serious.
This is not serious at all. You guys are not serious people. Yes, if I've had that quote back then.
Yeah.
Of course, now we built a whole new venture on top of a DynamoDB, which is kind of just MongoDB in a different flavor. But I saw that. But the one thing that I certainly think both worked back then, today, is this kind of willingness, which I don't think is very different to kind of the West Coast, of wanting to help the next guy. As in, there was just not a single player here which I couldn't ring or ping or get a meeting with. And that was just super empowering. As in, you want to talk money, you want to talk tech, you want to talk talent, you want to talk anything. And it was just very hard to see where else can I get that within 15 minutes on the subway. It's not even like, yes, perhaps one day I'll drive to Palo Alto. No. Good time at 1? Yeah. So I'll pop by at 1 today. That was super empowering. And I still think that counts today in a different way to many other destinations, which is that it's very easy. Both because the whole thing is so compressed, but also because of, I think, the kind of culture attached to the fact that, we can do things in the city today at 1 o'clock if you want to. And I do want to.
And I have a scheduler for that. Yeah.
And, I have a scheduler for that, or did. Now, what I think have changed is perhaps, if I were to pick one parameter, perhaps the glitter attached to entrepreneurship, where out west, if we're comparing those two kind of places, perhaps even Boston, which I have less exposure to, but certainly out west, there used to be a lot of glitter attached to entrepreneurship or running a startup. As in, if you can't play the guitar, you're still a rock star if you can code, right?
Yeah.
From the get-go. A little less so here. You're either a celebrity or you're not, and if you code, you're not. But I think over time, this whole idea of you're working on some venture or some idea in any kind of vertical, which of course is just very hard to compete with for any other place for it. You can be big in finance or fashion or any number of other things because it's in the city. So I do think that have changed so that you can be in your lift down on Wall Street where I live and tell the guy, oh yeah, me and my buddies got started again, just 10 guys in the basement working on a new venture. And he doesn't look like you, at you like you're an idiot. Like, oh yeah, sexy. I've been wanting to kind of quit Morgan Stanley for years. Yeah, I know, but you're never going to do it. But hey, you could.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm the sexier of these two people. Or perhaps this is just what I tell myself. I'm living a lie.
I think, I don't know. It's a good and a bad thing. I think that entrepreneurship is kind of encouraged. And so part of it is it's such a hard thing and it's so stressful. And like, I don't know why, like you, like I keep going back to it, like particularly after at least one company that failed spectacularly and everything. But like, you're drawn back to like the fight and everything. And I think part of it is that they build up this mythos and everything else is to get people to try it, because otherwise if you were entirely sane, you would never do it.
If you just looked at a spreadsheet of kind of things you could do with your life.
Yeah.
This is the shittiest column.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing that one. I haven't seen the title yet, but I'm certainly not doing it. I've come to conclude so I've done all of them back to back. No sabbatical. Like back to back. No, we'll spend 6 months in Barbados. Just I'll quit Monday somewhere else. And tonight, 8 p.m., we get started on a new thing.
Wow.
Oh, really? We've done the overlap, right? That's always what we kind of do. We do all the research and all of that. So done them back to back, but I think you have to do it. And that's why I think there might be not two types. That's unfair. But you have to do it for the love of the sport.
Yeah.
As in, if you're in it for the trophies and the medals, like in sport, you're not going to get any of them. But if you're in it for the love of the sport, where I actually just like to play soccer, then you play soccer 7 days a week. It's not a job. It's just me just kind of fooling around. And who was it? Was it Paul Graham who said it? Perhaps. But this whole idea of competing against somebody who does it, he didn't call it for the love of the sport, but does it because they think it's fun.
Yeah.
It's just very hard to win against people. I don't even care if I win. I just care if I play.
Yeah.
Because that means your kind of really shitty days, it's just another kind of fun day at the gym for me. It's cool. I'll never surrender.
Did you guys ever hear Michael Jordan had this clause in his contract called "For the Love of the Game" contract, love of the game clause, and
it allowed him wherever.
He could play any pickup game. He could play basketball anytime, anywhere, and if he was injured, he got treated like he was playing in an NBA game in terms of how his contract played out. And he insisted on it because he was like, "But I love basketball so much, I'm not going to pass up a chance to play."
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, it was a really, really, really cool thing. Well, let's talk about a couple things going on in the AI world today. One of the things I'm most interested in, how you guys think about it, is so ChatGPT is going to start offering ads, and this happens for so many consumer tech companies, right? It has over time. Even people that say they won't do it or whatever, they always end up monetizing via ads. And now all the TV companies, Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that shit, you got to look at ads, and
all roads in consumer lead to ads.
Yeah. So what do we think about? Are we worried about that? Is this what was expected? Do we think they'll back off? We think they'll be successful?
Who was it? I just bought the book a month back because I thought I'd just scan it quickly. That journalist who invented the word institutification.
Is it Cory Doctorow?
I think you might be right, yes. It's on my kind of bookshelf along with the 20 other things I want to read next week. But it seems inevitable that we will get to a point for where there's people who are unwilling or unable to pay $20 a month or whatever kind of edition they might be on. I'm not so sure I'm allergic to it. What I do like this time is that there was some sort of procedure put in place for where you can pay to not get ads. For where on Google, that was never an option. There was never a $10 subscription to Google for where I don't want AdWords. What's funny though on Google was that I think probably even today, there was some sort of inflection point where the ads might have been better than the organic results. As in, well, it's been hyper optimized to the degree for where the organic results can't really be trusted anymore in certain kind of terms and phrases. And that might not happen in this space. So I'm not allergic to it. The one thing that, of the many things we could talk about, that irks me a little bit is once the agent arrives in spaces for where it's not obvious what is biased or have been bought and what is not, as in, sure, you can label things in a visual UI. What do we do in some sort of audio UI? Or what do we do in some setting for where, I really just want the action. You're doing the prediction and you're taking the action, but the action was taken with what in mind? And sure, anybody will say, but there'll be all sorts of kind of preferences and settings and so on and so forth. Sure, but most people won't touch any of that. So that's probably the part where that's going to be interesting, where you can all of a sudden start to kind of direct hundreds, if not millions of people buy them to go in certain directions. That feels a little that irks me a little bit.
Yeah, I think people are overreacting with this because it's been murmured for a while. Almost everything that's free has some type of ad involved, and even things that are paid. I think the idea of, we can't have LLMs feed you up an ad as long as they're documenting what they are. We walk by a billboard, we watch commercials all the time. I think it's just a part of a natural product development that you include ads at some point if it's a consumer-facing app.
And I think many times ads are not bad. It's not like I buy Wired magazine and I throw up on every third page because there's an ad.
Right.
There's some pretty cool
Or I'm in the Uber
ads.
and there's the picture of the beer on the screen in front of me.
Some of these ads are cool, right? As in, I actually don't mind. What I mind, of course, is when I don't know why you told me something. That's the part that irks me. Where, I asked for a top 3 list of something, or, hey, I need kind of a module for my document database. I have something in mind. And then you give me an answer. Yeah, but is that based on my query or question, or based on the fact that somebody has some agenda and they are likely to sell me something, and you'd rather I be exposed to that than something else? And it becomes not sure. Yeah. In the beginning, it'll all be kind of these kind of square boxes with a little kind of ad on top of it. But there comes a point where, but I just asked my agent and he got voiced out. Or I asked Claude to do something and you just pick it. Oh, yeah, but who actually picked it?
Well, that would be like if I was going to make a counterpoint to Ryan's sort of approval of this and offer some disapproval, I would say my concern would be sort of at the intersection of that and this idea of something that you mentioned earlier about x.ai, which was like you have these like category of perceived errors, or you have these spaces where people don't always know what they want or don't know what the truth is or whatever. And I would tie them together by saying there've been a bunch of companies I've looked at as an angel investor. They come along and like, you know what we want to do? We want to use AI to like weed out fake news and like tell people it's true. And I'm like, but the humans can't agree. Like, how do you even build a labeled data set like that? Because two people on different sides of the spectrum would say that label that differently. And so there's areas like that are either just ambiguous or people are misinformed. And so if you ask these things, so part of the problem is these things are so broad and they do so much. If you ask it a question about something controversial like vaccines or now the food pyramid or like whatever, like what's it going to say? And then how are you going to tie ads to that? And what might those ads be? And how much of this is nefarious or how much, like, I don't know what you guys think, but like x.ai has changed, or x.com, whatever Twitter's called now. Twitter, let's call it Twitter.
I call it Twitter out of spite.
It's very different since like the flow, like everything's different since Elon Musk bought it. Like I've even noticed like if you say very pro MAGA kinds of things, you'll get a lot more views just naturally than if you don't. Like I can see that in my analytics, or if you just talk about something else, like it's weird.
I think it's one of the, that's not true, but it's one of the first times where, like you, I've actually thought about kind of what is going on the other side. Oh, sorry, just outside of my own kind of thought bubble, where most of the time I've kind of selected myself into a thought bubble and I kind of just live in that universe. I'm kind of, slightly center left or something like that. I'm Danish, right? So you can paint your own picture. And then all of a sudden, given, you build up a little bit of a following, that's kind of where you used to get your news, right? Yeah. Or kind of geeky new things. And then all of a sudden it turns into something else where it's not like I would have moved to some other channel out of choice. It's just I was here already, but then it moved.
Yeah.
That's been very kind of eye-opening.
So going back to the article, then it's really about, are ads going to manipulate our experience with LLMs? Is that what we're really saying? Because I don't think any of us disagree that it's wrong to get lobbed up an ad that feels relevant to the query or like the conversation you're having. It's really, is it trying to like pull me away from what I was trying to achieve by using the tool?
I'll bring us back to the top. What I do like is if this is a tool in some business setting where I don't need an ad, we started out this whole journey where there is an option where you can buy it as a tool.
Yeah.
Then there might be people who will use it as, in lack of any better kind of moniker, as a search engine where, hey, I'm just a consumer. I'm looking for kind of a way to do this particular cake. Great. Go use your agent. There might be some flour you can go buy that comes along next to it. I don't think there's any harm in that. And good on you. King George sells flour. You can just add that to basket right away. All thumbs up.
Well, let's move on to talking about the AI bubble, which I feel like we talk about every week. But something interesting happened this week, which is, or last week, I guess, but like TSMC's chief executive was asked on an earnings call what he thought about the bubble. And he basically said, like, I'm very nervous about it because we're going to invest like $50 billion in CapEx next year and everything else. And he said, so I went to my customers and to their customers and I talked to everybody. I looked at their books. He's like, I'm convinced that at least right now, the demand is real. So what do you got? Did it change either of you change your perception when you heard that? Are you still worried? Are we still worried we're in a bubble, or what are we thinking?
So if any of us three knew, we wouldn't be sitting here. We'll be doing something else. So we obviously don't know. We all have opinions, though.
Yeah.
I will say, just as a footnote, I did have a pool of AI exposed-ish stock, which I sold last week.
Okay.
Well, based off your
timing.
success of,
And I,
exiting on April, what was it, 11th of 2000? Like that's not a good thing. That sounds ominous.
So we sold our first venture in April 2000. Then we did a venture that didn't work out. We can talk about that. That blew up in my face. Really expensive MBA because I financed it myself as well. Didn't need fucking VCs for that. Paid for the whole thing. And then
I like that expensive MBA.
that's what it is. Like, Colombia? No, I'll tell you about. I'll tell you about a really expensive MBA.
I'll buy a whole building. How about that?
So the next one we sold in May 9th, 2008.
Wow, more good timing.
Had we not done that, I would have worked at least another 3-4 years in that venture because the whole world just said, "Hey, we're going to put everything on pause, Dennis. You sit here. In 4 years, we'll have a chat again." So that was very fortunate. That was the venture we sold to Yahoo.
All right, so sold .com right before the crash, sold right before the financial crash of 08, and you just recently sold your AI exposed stocks the other week.
So there you have it.
All right,
there you have it.
Well, that's not reassuring. I'll sit definitely on the other side of this. I think what I liked about it is he went to his customers, and he's really trying to find truth. And I just have not seen enough people not making real long-term traction with some form of serious AI. I think there's a lot of silly money thrown at silly idea AI, but there's a lot of real big billion-dollar opportunities that are still so early in their adoption. And even the early adoption is really transformative for real business outcomes. That makes me feel like, how can that be a bubble?
I probably wouldn't go that far on the how can this be a bubble? Famous last words.
Yeah.
But I do think the very people who ingest the most into the current story are folks where the money is somewhat available. So it's not just a pipe dream. It's Facebook who decide we want N number of new data centers or N number of new things where we have some capital ready and available and we've made the call and that'll happen. And that's not a dream that's going to disappear in the next couple of months. That will take at least the whole next year, probably years before we get to the other side, should the whole idea turn out to be not as potent as we had imagined, but not next week. As in, just like you, I can't see next week. I did sell those stocks though, but there you have it.
Well, and you have companies like Meta's actually working on, last I heard, like a special ASIC just for recommendation algorithms, right? Because they have the size and the scale, they could make use of that. And I think there's a lot of the AI has been adopted at places that have the scale that they can push it out. And even if it makes marginal improvements in their business at the scale they're at, that's tens or hundreds of millions of dollars a year a lot of times, right? Which is going to at least keep the cycle going. Like look at what Apple's innovation around the iPhone did for the whole ecosystem, right? Some of the stuff that they had to solve around like the glass and their own chips in the phone and stuff like that. So
there also seems to be some sort of backup baked into the investment, which is that much of what they invest in is compute.
yeah.
So it's not like there's a version of the future for where, you know what, we were wrong. We're going to need less compute.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, sure, we might have laid that fiber in the mid 90s a little too early, but there was no version for where we didn't want that fiber.
No.
And I think it's going to be the same with that compute, for where Meta might just have overinvested. Yeah, but it's not like they're going to sit idle, those data centers. Sure, it'll take a little longer. We thought the the spreadsheet would have played out differently, but that compute, that'll be utilized.
Yeah, I think that's a mature way to look at it. It's not like a crisis at a macro level. It might be a crisis at a quarter to quarter. Shareholders are upset because the P&L looks bad.
It's not
but
like
I think,
NFTs.
Yeah,
It's,
right. I don't think there's like a cliff that someone's driving off of.
Okay, did you guys ever buy any NFTs?
I did not.
I bought my girlfriend an NFT. And it was very fun. It was a picture that she really liked. I was like, oh, you like this picture?
So I, not NFTs, but my daughters keep sending me kind of once every quarter current status BTC. So I bought all my Bitcoin at $250 or something like that.
What year was this?
Like 2013?
Pretty early.
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thereabout. So, yeah, feels right.
Yeah.
Then I sold it all, invited everybody on a month-long endeavor to Barbados. I would travel back and forth. The family was there. We laughed and laughed all the time. This is on Dad's kind of Bitcoin because I nailed it. I had a 10x. I think I sold them, for whatever. Let's call it $2,500 or $3,000 or something like that. So that was kind of my little period. And now, of course, I can never go back.
Yeah.
I close my eyes and have a picture of some account where I paid $250 a pop.
Your ego won't let you buy it again.
I just can't. I can't.
Right. Barely afford like one Bitcoin, right? With the amount that you had though. Oof.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's plenty of more dramatic stories. But that's my story.
Yeah. I didn't put it on the agenda this week, but there have been stories going around where so a lot of people believe with the advances in quantum computing and AI that a lot of these tokens are going to be hackable, and their cryptographic properties aren't going to be. So that's part of what's dragging on the price right now from the like computer science side of people that are looking at things.
That is just so. That sounds evil. Not that particular corner of the story, but the whole idea of quantum computing is it's just so hard to wrap your head around, right? For where you read article upon article, or paper upon paper, and you think you somehow kind of get what's going on. But even then, I go back, I have a Diet Coke, I look out the window, it's like,
sounds like I just watched like a deep science fiction movie after I get done watching a documentary. I'm like, is that real still? Or
so, like I just got a lot of mixed emotions where, well, it's real to the degree for where we proved it. And side note, so my co-founder at x.ai was part of that large team at CERN who proved the
Higgs boson
particle. He's in kind of on the side in the movie Particle Fever as well.
Super cool.
So obviously would have endless kind of chit chats on what the future might bring in compute, but it's just again fucking hard. It's gonna just wrap your head around. And by the way, I spent my whole childhood optimizing for what 1 megahertz, 8K of memory, Like
Yeah.
I spent like weeks on some inner loop. As in, I did machine learning first 10 years programming, right? As in just nurturing small inner loops, like, oh yeah, I think I can change this div, I can do this mol kind of differently. Like, now, just what does that look like when it arrives?
Some people believe so.
Sorry, this is turning into an existential crisis for me.
What's interesting about what you just said is, you have a whole generation of programmers that has grown up and like doesn't have to know anything about the hardware they program on, right? Which is like where I came up and like I learned C initially in like the late 90s, and it was like you kind of had to know how much memory you had and how to access it. Like there were things that you had to do. You had to know some things about the device. There were certain blocks of memory you couldn't access because they were used for specific things sometimes, and you had to take care of all that. And all that's been abstracted away and everything. And there's a lot of benefits to that. But I have a friend who's a professor of electrical engineering at MIT. And one of the things he thinks is going to happen is as these AI workloads, and there's so many different types of AI workloads. And so, he thinks you're going to continue to see chip innovation, as AI grows and everything else. And he's like, but, the sort of like CMOS transistors we use now are so robust and so well done that as you start to get in these other, making them with different materials and stacking them, doing all these crazy different things with them, he's like, they're going to get more finicky, and you're going to go back to this world where you kind of have to know some things about the hardware. You kind of got to, jiggle the door handle a little bit, for lack of a better word, while you're programming to get it to, put your little hacks in there and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see if we do go back to that world.
Yeah, it is interesting. It might just... I'm not so sure. So the vast kind of majority of kind of engineers, young engineers that I speak to now have lost a lot of that. As in, one of my courses were operating systems. Not as in, hey, let me tell you a few stories about it. As in writing our own operating systems. One of our kind of courses were file systems. As in, we would write file systems. As in, that venture which we sold to Yahoo, we ended up, so this is, I'm going to date myself, but one of the biggest issues, certainly back in the 2008, 9, 10, 11, when you had magnetic disks, were that you had too much data, but you couldn't pick it up from magnetic disks quick enough. So we ended up kind of writing our own file system, because the way you pick it up is in a set of chunks. Then you pick a chunk, you have to spin around, and you pick up another chunk. So we kind of create a file system that was the same size as kind of one spin on these disks, so I could just kind of keep picking up data. And once we've done that, we have our own file system. Then we write our own kind of column database, because most analytics is really kind of adding up columns. SQL is kind of row-based, right? Mm-hmm. Select first name from customer table, and then you kind of pick that up. So we did that. Then we had to kind of write our own query language. These were all kind of very fair requests, which we could go out and hire against. Not like some sort of esoteric, I need to find some sort of PhD who did some research on something, and I might be able to find 2 or 3. And
that was pretty standard stuff at that time.
Engineers, which we hired to do that, right? And we talked about it, all of us, in kind of sessions, and we all had some sort of exposure to it. Me trying to hire for that today, that would be sort of, hey, we need kind of A+ superstars to come in. We'll talk about kind of very low level stuff. I do wonder sometimes whether, do some of this turn into kind of research endeavors where how many can write a compiler today? As in, who even writes that? We wrote compilers as kids, but nobody will write a C compiler today, or even write their own little mini language just for the fun of it. It's just not really on your list of shit to do. I wonder sometimes whether, well, yes, highly specialized individuals come out, and only very few will kind of work on that. And there's some papers, and there's just a tiny minority that works on that, highly paid. Yeah. Tim, Susan, they work on those compilers. That's it. Not 100,000 kids.
Well, let's hop to the sort of last article we have today. I'm really interested in your take on, because you were at Yahoo, and one of the things I think that one of the biggest mistakes Yahoo ever made that a lot of people don't realize is they licensed Google's search engine for a while because they didn't think search was that important. And big mistake. And now it just came out that Gemini is going to power Apple's AI. And I'm wondering if you guys think like brilliant move by Apple, models are going to be commoditized, no sense in working on your own, or wow, they're giving away the farm to Google.
So I'm on that side of the fence, which is that feels like one of those own goals for where Tim Apple will eventually go. Not tomorrow, not next year, but it'll be a fumble to the degree for where, sure, you got that whole setup in Asia done very well. Hats off. And you 10x'd over a decade, and we thank you very much, but you gotta go. As in, that was just a spectacular, a moment of insanity where you show something that looks like, oh yeah, it's a simple partnership, but perhaps this is the device. Like all of these kind of other little things that we have on our phone might just not mean anything. The agent is the device.
Yeah.
I would not be comfortable
Just
as an Apple shareholder.
what are we doing as Apple is my only question over the last 4 or 5 years. This isn't like 2002 where like LLMs just hit the market, like what's our AI plan? They have had almost half a decade now, and still I don't understand how they're not a front runner.
They don't have a strategy.
Having a clear, and they've had tremendous amount of executives be leaving their AI roles over the last couple of years. So I'm just curious, like, why isn't this a priority when it clearly is a big economic macro opportunity over the next decades?
And they were early on it with Siri
And
in
they
some
were
sense, or
early.
at least thinking about it. Now,
Right.
Siri wasn't that great, but
And
it was fucking awesome. Back then, not today, but back then.
All right.
So I know the guys who did that, and they certainly did, I think, in my opinion, spectacular work in the NLP space, ahead of everybody else. And by far, the best agent. We'll have a laugh about it now, but many things kind of in hindsight looks kind of silly and toyish, certainly back then. But damn, I think as you allude to, I think they had a head start. That should have been OpenAI.
No.
And it's not like, oh, yes, but they have infinite money
Right.
conceptually,
Infinite.
where you could have run all these
Their
experiments.
balance sheet, just look at their balance sheet. The cash they have is just
I just-
incredible. It could
yeah.
be multiple AI labs
I
worth
don't
of
get
just
it.
cash on their balance sheet today.
Yeah.
Not even like CapEx, like just on your balance sheet of cash, cold hard cash.
But then again, I can just see how a pool of executives sit in some room. What do they get right now? Short of 20 billion a year, I think, from Google search. Some amount that rhymes with that at least.
yeah.
Straight to the bottom line. It's not like,
yeah.
oh yes, let's look at the factories. No. Somebody sent me a check, and it just goes straight to the bottom line.
Well, you gave me such an
But-
interesting visual because there's all that, commercials that we've seen about this calculator that was on your desk and the calendar that was on your wall and the, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah. It's all like gone into these apps on your phone. And then you're like, those apps actually don't mean anything anymore once the agent is truly mature. So it's almost like this moment where they're giving away what made them once special is taking all these things and putting it into one device. Well, now all those apps on that device is becoming one agent, and they just gave away that agent opportunity.
And then they'll hang on, obviously, for the longest period of time. Then it'll be the hardware is still nice, or still nicer than the guys with a better agent. Then the camera is still a little bit better, but slowly but surely, they'll turn into any one of those camera companies that we might have remembered from the past. That were kings.
And to add to your now 21 books of a backlog there's a great book that just came out last year called Apple in China.
Yeah.
And it's all about, have you read it?
No,
have you seen it?
It's in my pile.
Yeah, it's a really brilliant read, and it's all about how the manufacturing processes migrated one by one to China, and now there's this big concern because, as we all know, I don't think China's the most caring about IP protection and processes and trade secrets. So all these other manufacturers are starting to pick up on how that glass was curved and what materials you use and what processing at what time. And I think that's going to be a crisis. If you say Apple's going to hang on because of that hardware technology, I think that could go all at once because it's being undone pretty fast right now.
A lot of companies struggle sometimes to figure out what they're really good at, right? It works and you do some things. And so like a question for Apple, like you could argue they probably, on their executive team, probably sit around and say like, we're a design company and a device company, and we're not in it. But like, you could argue they're an integration company, right? And they've done a better job of anybody else. Like they moved off of Intel chips and did their own earlier than anybody else. They've bought some of their suppliers. They've been more vertically integrated. Like they, ran their own, coming out with the phone, they ran their own app store, which was kind of like a little bit novel at that time. So you could argue that, but like, who knows how they see themselves internally? I don't know.
Well, we're young enough to see it play out.
Yeah.
That is true.
So we'll meet here again in 5 years.
Yeah.
And we'll see kind of the lay of the land.
Yeah.
But to me, it feels like an own goal of gigantic proportions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Generational fumble.
Yeah.
Maybe not a quarterly fumble, but feels generational.
Well, before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. So you've done a bunch of companies. What's your latest company do? And like, what attracted you to this problem space?
I run, and I'll give you the advert, of
Okay.
course.
All right,
that's my job. I run a list of hate on my phone so that I don't end up working on stuff because I think it's sexy. So whenever I get exposed to shit in my universe, which I don't like, I add it to my list. So I don't do anything outside of my current venture. So I don't sit on boards, do advisory, I don't angel invest. It's probably all kind of very poor decisions, but I only do one thing. So if I lose, I'll just kind of man up and say, I wasn't good enough. If I win, I'll take a little bit of credit because it's all I did. Now, if I have an idea, and like entrepreneurs, we'll have ideas all the time,
Yes.
right? Where, you know what? You could suck me into something tonight, 2 pizzas, some Diet Cokes, I'll bring my laptop, and we're on it right away. Just the excitement. I'm very easy.
And now you can code it tonight too with these tools.
Yeah, we can get an MVP out tomorrow, right? So I'm very easy to kind of lure into things, but I feel almost kind of unfaithful to my current venture if I think about other things. As in, it's kind of like almost, why are you thinking about other women? You got a wife. Then it's like, so if I have something, this week in better, I immediately kind of add it to my list so I can forget about it. Like I save some sort of sacred baby. Half the ideas, 90% of the ideas are shite. Now, some of them are not. There's just things which I didn't like. Now, coming back to your question, what am I working on? One of those things from that list for where if you make any piece of software, B2C, B2B, and you put it to market, you are positively forced to support it. Because there's no utopia for where your software is so intuitive, for where anybody who will log in and use it knows exactly how to use it and will never have any questions.
Right.
One day, perhaps, I don't think so. Nevertheless, the way we solve for that today, all of us, is that we put some sort of help center in place, primarily a knowledge base. Here's 400 articles. Here's how you set up a new user. Here's how you add two-factor authentications. Here's how you add segmentations. Here's how you use the filtering and so on and so forth. And each one of those articles are chock full of screenshots from the application itself. Hey, you go here, you click that. Here's the drop down. Here's what you drag and so on and so forth. Now, we've had tremendous progress on the engineering side. As in, we can have the most junior engineer push shit to production this afternoon. As in, things are probably happening to our app as I sit here because we have this very polished machine where engineering can move forward at very high velocity. Customer support, customer success, anything to do with how we support our customers, not so much. As in, they have a version of the past which they documented because they simply can't move forward at the same velocity. So what we built is this automation machine that can log into your piece of software, take a screenshot of all your features, log into your Zendesk or Intercom, scan all your articles, replace all of the outdated images. Run that as a job every Sunday night so you don't have to. Now, that's what we're doing today. What we really want to do once we kind of get hold of all of the kind of challenges around that is I want to really just have you add a pixel to your app so that the very use of your product becomes the documentation, as in the way people use your product, as in, yes, I had 100 other users set up two-factor authentication. Yeah, I track that. I'll create documentation for it because that's obviously what they do. And their very use means that, engineering launched something at 2 o'clock. Some users got exposed at 3 o'clock. Dennis picked it up at 4 o'clock. 5 o'clock, we already have an article on how to use that because it happened automatically. So that's the space I'm in. That's awesome. Very short, if you ask me in the lift, what do you do, Dennis? Some very nice PNGs. That's really it today.
Yeah. I mean,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we just, we're less than a, year or so startup and, just created our first docs for customers because like someone couldn't log in. I was like, oh, how do you not know how to do it? It's like a CLI tool. So you have to download this and you have to run a terminal command. And so here I am taking screenshots of it.
I'll tell you what your process looked like. It's probably like, to begin with, very early in our journey, there is no kind of customer support. We just founders trying to make people happy, and I'll do anything to make you happy. Then at some point, there's a little bit of scale. We hire our first few people. Those first few people, their instructions are not McKinsey style. They're just, hey, we got 100 incoming requests. You solve all of them, and you don't go home before you solve all of them. And then after a while, hey, I'm drowning here. We should probably kind of put some documentation in place.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we sign some sort of contract with some vendor.
Yeah.
We start to put a few articles in place and kind of say, hey, I hope they can do things without asking us. Yes, we'll change the product, but I still need to put this in place. And that's where we arrive as well. Hey, how about I help you automate some of that?
Yeah, no, super smart. I love the way that you make a list of things that you work on is I really hate this.
Yeah.
At some point I'll get to fixing it now.
Yeah.
It's just things I hate, which is always nice. Because then if you work on things you yourself hate, you don't have to kind of assemble some sort of distant empathy from having talked to users. I'll just close my eyes and say, you know what I hated the most as a founder was when I looked at us kind of, first of all, as a founder, I live in the future. So I don't even talk about the app we have. I talk about some version of an app we might have in 4 months.
Of course.
And somehow, hey, the world, in my mind, it already exists. It doesn't. And then, of course, reality is 4 months behind. Then I look at the documentation. That's another 4 months old. So there's like an 8-month delta between the universe I live in and what people see. Like, not fucking cool. So, yes.
Yeah. 8 months isn't that bad. Could be 8 years,
For some it is. But the cool thing is I've become so cocky when I speak to people, which is that there's not a single product where without any research, I can't immediately say, hey, let's jump into your documentation. Let's see if it's up to date.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
100% of the time. Let's just pick anything. Oh, yes. Shit. Yeah, we rebranded. Yeah, you did. When was this?
Yeah.
18 months ago.
Yeah.
Come on.
I always like how you'll launch a new website and like a year later you're getting traffic to some page. You're like, how's that page shouldn't still be there? Who's going to that and where does it live?
Yeah.
Like, that's really funny.
So yes, launch brightly. That's what we're working on. We're early, like you guys.
Yeah.
So we're just 10 guys in a basement.
Yeah.
This is my first venture doing that fully remotely. So
Cool.
everything I've done in the past have been on site, 0800. Here's the address.
Yeah.
You guys on site or remote?
We're a combo. We're 9 people and like 5 of us are here in New York. So,
But do you have an address?
we work. Yeah. So
Yeah. No, I love WeWork. WeWork is kind of like the, I don't know, the AWS of space. You can just spin up a new room when you need it and delete it when you don't need it. We used it for all of x.ai, as in, I probably had 25 rooms in the end.
Wow.
But just,
I feel like it gets expensive when you get to 20, 30 people, I feel like, but sometimes, particularly if you don't know, like, because people want you to sign at least a 3-year lease, if not 5 for a business lease. So
yeah, we had a I was very happy with it. I'm not on commission from WeWork, but it just worked very well for us. So we spun up our whole labeling operation inside WeWork. Then we moved that to Manila later, but I just spun it up. I only had 30-day contracts on anything. So never cost me really anything to spin it up.
WeWork, you owe us $1,000 for this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Next sponsor. Well, they won't actually give it to us because I hate WeWork. I can't do it. We bought an office, and we're only paying a couple grand a month for it, but it's what we need. It's a 4-person team, about to be 5, and you came by a little before we started hanging up my posters, but I have all these like band posters. I'm really big into like heavy metal and rock, so I have all my band posters up. We play music, and I don't care about like having neighbors and like a WeWork. So it's also nice to have your own space sometimes.
Yeah. We ended up getting our own floor at some point as well, which made the whole thing a little easier. And at some scale, you get a little bit of a discount. But you're right.
So let's use bands then. So we always end on a question about New York. And so I think maybe the question for today should be like, what's your favorite band that originated from or spent most of their early days in New York?
Yeah, that's a tough one because there's so many bands that didn't grow up in New York, but they became like a New York band. But it's an artist that I really, really have fancied for a long time. But Spotify Wrapped told me they were my #1 listen to last year. So I have to give him a shout out.
Yeah.
Rob Zombie.
Oh,
He-
wow.
Yeah, he went to a couple art schools here in the city, and I
Wow.
never knew that until recently when I went through my Wrapped and it was giving me like
Yep.
the bio. I was like, I didn't even know this was a New York artist. But yeah, he went to, I think, Pratt. He went to another art school, dropped out of both. But yeah, I'm a huge, Rob Zombie fan, White Zombie, the whole thing.
Mine,
I
without
like
a doubt,
White
would
Zombie.
be,
Yeah, some great music.
Yeah.
mine would be the Beastie Boys. Like
Yeah,
they were like so
iconic.
prime in the 90s when I was like in my like really, formative music shaping years. And so, yeah.
Have you seen their recent like live show? Not like music, but they do like a documentary of their band, and it's live.
I haven't.
It's really good. You should watch it. It's
Yeah.
like an hour long, and they tell the story, but they do jokes in between it, and they
Yeah.
have like clips of it. Yeah, you should go. I think it's on Netflix or something like that.
Okay.
What about yourself? What do you
Do you have
got?
one?
Good question. JC, perhaps?
Okay.
If I were to kind of,
Yeah.
'cause he's just old enough where he was young when I was young-ish.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
And
cool.
then perhaps a little bit more because I live, so the JC is in my building. So perhaps I moved closer because of that, because I look at it every day like, oh, yeah. So
I will say my favorite current band that plays in New York is called Just the Tip. And they, really funny name. These guys play. I saw them at Red Lion, which is one of my favorite live music places down by NYU.
Amazing.
And they've played in there, and they do all kinds of classic rock covers. They're a lot of fun, and they've got like 6 or 7 or 8 people in the band, so it's a big band, which is fun too. A lot of the guys play lots of different
Yeah.
instruments. So yeah,
okay. I'm going to look that up.
All right.
yeah.
All right. Next
On
hangout session.
Spotify.
Yeah.
If you write that on Google, I'm not sure I'm going to get it.
Yeah, you're not gonna. Yeah,
But I'll
Be careful putting that
I'll
into
start
your
my
LLM.
search on Spotify and see where it takes me.
Amazing.
Cool. Well, Dennis, thanks for coming on today. And if people want to learn more about your company, just launchbrightly.com.
Launchbrightly.com. I'm at Dennis at Launchbrightly, and everywhere on the internet under Dennis Mortensen. Feel free to kind of ping me.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, and everybody out there, thanks for listening. Give us a thumbs up, rate us if you like the show. Otherwise, don't. And please go watch all the other ones. And if you know somebody that should come on as a guest host, talk about stuff in AI, please reach out with an email. Thanks.